Welcome back to the characterised YouTube channel. In today's class we are going to be learning how to make this beautiful padded off shoulder bustier pattern. Okay, it's a very simple tutorial. This is what it looks like by the time we are done, and this is what it looks like on the inside as well. So we are going to be learning how to cut and sew this in this class. If this is something you would like to learn, kindly stay tuned till the end of this tutorial. Thank you. To make this off shoulder bustier pattern, I'm going up by 5.5 inches. You can also go up by 6 inches depending on how off you want the dress to be. So I'm just drafting my off shoulder pattern directly like this. You can see that the upper part is not there because I'm not going to use a yoke for this. So if you are going to be attaching a yoke to this, it's advisable you have a full basic bodice draft before you draft out your off shoulder pattern from it. If you like a tutorial on that as well, let me know in the comment section. I will do something on that. So there are different types of off shoulder. There is one that is going to the shoulder, that's the shoulder dart, and there's one that is going to the armhole, so that's the armhole princess dart. The one we're working with today is the shoulder dart, and I have my important points marked already. This is my chest line, also known as your armhole. This is my bust points, this is my under bust, and this is my waistline. So to draft your dart, what we're going to do is to get her bust span measurement, also known as the nipple to nipple. That's the distance between each nipple to the other. For me, that's 8. So 8 divided by 2 is 4. So from the center front, which is here, I'm going to mark 4 inches on my under bust. I'll mark it on my waistline as well as my bust point, and then I will make that into a straight line. So after taking my bust span measurement, I'm going to take a dart on my under bust and my waistline. So for this, for an average size, I'm taking a dart of 2 inches on my under bust and my waistline. So you can either measure what you have, the difference between your bust point and under bust, and whatever you have there, you divide it by 2, and you can use that to take your dart. But on average, I take 2 inches for a normal size, and if the person is busty, I take 3 inches for a more depth in my curve. So now these 2 inches that we are taking, you can either share it equally on both sides, but if you want your curve to be more pronounced, you take more dart on the parts on this side. Remember, this is the center front, so on your center front here, you can take, like, if you do the 2 inches, you can divide it into half an inch on one side and 1.5 on the other side, or you take 0.75 on one side and then you take 1.25 on the other side. So depending on the depth that you're working with. So for me, I'm going to take 3/4, that's 0.75 on this side, and then to make up my 2 inches, I'm going to take 1.25 on this side, so you can see. So the same thing that I have done on this side, I'll take the 0.75 here, and then I'm going to complete the 2 inches there. So now I'm going to connect these darts together, and then we're going to connect this to our bust point. So to do that, I'll just come down by like half an inch or 0.75 on my bust point as well, and then using a curved ruler, I'm going to connect these darts together. And then on this side as well, I'm going to connect just like this. So now after connecting it, on the, remember we are going to be tightening the upper part, so on this upper part you can take this bust span straight, but this is a shoulder dart. Normally if we have a full bodice on our shoulder, we just measure what we have, divide it by 2 and connect to your bust point. But because this is just from the under bust area, what I'm going to do, remember my bust span is 4 inches, so I'll add 1 inch to that, and that's going to leave me with 5 inches. So I'm marking 5 inches here, and the 5 inches that I marked, I'm going to connect it to my bust point, so you can see what I have here. So here I'm taking a dart of 1.5 inches. Okay, so the 1.5 inches that I'm taking, I'll divide it equally because I'm working with a bust dart. So by the time I close this bust dart, this side is going to open up for me more. You will see that by the time we do it. So I'll take 0.75 on this side and 0.75, which is together 1.5 inches. So again, I'm going to connect this to like half an inch above my bust point measurement using a slightly curved ruler, and then you make sure whatever you are connecting is smooth enough. Okay, you don't want any parts being sharp. So here again I'm going to connect as well, and then I'll blend it in very well with whatever it is that I have coming there. So this is my dart. Okay, so now the next thing is to take our neckline measurement. So my neckline, for me, I want it to be around 10 inches. You can measure that on your body from one armhole area to the other, your chest area basically. So here I have 4 inches. So if I want it to be 5 inches, I'll just add allowance to join my sleeve to it, so I'll just make it 6 inches. I have 4 inches here. I'll just keep this because of the dart that I'm taking. Remember, this is not going to be part of the measurement. So here I have 4. So now I'm going to shift the 4 here and then continue my measurement. So I have 6 inches here. On my chest line here, I'm going to take my bust measurement. The bust is 40 divided by 4 is 10. So here I have about 4 1/4. So I just shift it so that the dart will not be part of my measurement, and I have my 10 inches here. I'm adding 1.5 inches seam allowance to that. So here on my waistline, I'm going to take my waist measurement. My waist is 30 divided by 4 is 7.5. So I have 3 inches here. I'm just going to shift the dart away so that it's not going to part of my measurement, and then I'm going to mark the 7.5 inches and add my seam allowance to that as well. So here I'm going to connect. I hope my camera is capturing everything. I'm going to connect like this to form my side, and then here using my curved ruler I'm going to connect my armhole. Okay, so now that is what the pattern looks like. So the last thing now is to tighten the under bust area. So here I'm going to come down by 2 inches for my under bust. From my bust point, I'll come down by 2 inches, and then I'm going to connect that to my bust point like this. So this is the bust that I'm going to take. I hope you understand that, and that is how I'm going to be drafting my front bodies. So here you can decide on whatever neckline that you want later. You can cut it together with your bodies. So now remember, we have already gone down by 5.5 inches here, so you have to take note of that. I think 7.5 is fine for me. So I can just take my curve now and then connect like this for a sweetheart neckline. So it's basically whatever neckline you want. There is no, okay. So now I'll cut this out now and then work on the back. So for the back, this is my pattern. You can see there is no under bust, there is no bust at the back. So I just have my armhole line and my waistline. Remember, we took a bust dart in front, okay, which we're going to be closing. So you can see that the length of my front is longer than what I have on my back. You can see it's 2 inches longer, which by the time I close this 2 inches bust dart is going to be exactly the same. You can see the armhole line and the waistline is going to be exactly the same, so please don't get confused. So here, this is my zipper allowance. I'm going to start by taking, I normally take, you can take 0.75 or half an inch, but I normally take 1 inch away from my waistline on my zipper area to avoid gaping. So now this 1 inch that I'm taking away, I'm going to connect it back to my starting point, okay, which means that now my armhole, my zipper area, remember this was my zipper allowance earlier, I've changed. So now again I'm going to mark here, I'm going to mark another zipper allowance, which is 1 inch, and then here it remains the same here. Remember, we just took the dart here. So what you just need to do now is to connect from this your new line to this part, okay, and this is going to be our new zipper allowance. So you can see that we have taken away 1 inch here on the waistline alone. So now here, this new line is my zipper allowance. So from there I'm going to take my dart. So I'll just take my bust band, the same bust band measurement that I added here. I'm going to take it on my zipper, on my, not, you're not going to enter into your zipper allowance where your normal body starts. That's where you're taking the dart, and then I'm going to connect that. So on this waist area, I'm going to take half an inch on both sides, and then I'll connect that to my chest line. So that's the only dart I'm taking on the waist, on the back area, and this is my dart. So after this, now I'll take my circumference measurement, the same 6 inches that I used for the back is what for the front is what I'm using for the back. And here again, from my zipper allowance, from where my zipper allowance stopped, I'm going to take my bust measurement, which is 40 divided by 4. Oh, the camera captured this. So 40 divided by 4 is 10. So I have 10 inches here, and then I'm going to add my 1.5 inches seam allowance. So that's on the waistline, it's 7.5. So I have 2.5 inches here. I'm just going to shift it and continue my measurement and add my seam allowance as well, and then I'll connect that. Okay, so with my curved ruler, I'm going to connect my armhole curve as well, and then you work with whatever neck line measurement that you want for the back. So we have gone off by 5.5 inches before, so I can maintain my chest line, and then I'm going to connect that to my armhole. So this is the neckline that I'm going to work with for the back. So this is the draft for the back, and this is the draft for the front. You can see how easy it is to draft this. So I have cut out the back. You can see this is my dart. So you can just go ahead and close your dart if you don't want to slash it open, and then you just close it like this, and then hold with a masking tape. And then for the front, we're going to go ahead and open up one of our darts so that I can close my bust dart. Okay, so by closing the dart, you will see now that it's going to open up what we have here more. So now I'm closing the bust dart like this, and you can see now that the dart here has been transferred to this upper area. So you see, I'll just hold this with my masking tape. With my masking tape, I don't have that now, so I'm using my pin, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut out my neckline. So on this other dart as well, you cut it out, and your patterns are ready to be transferred to your fabric. So I just go ahead now and cut this on my fabric. We'll pad it, and then we'll sew. This is what my pattern looks like after cutting out the dart. You can see, and then if you check the side seam after closing our bust dart, you will see that your side seam is going to be exactly the same. So I'm not going to have any issues with joining them together. So I'm going ahead to cut it on my bodice. I cut just the front because I just want to show us how to pad it. So I cut patterns, my patterns on the fabric for the front. This is the center front, added few allowances to join it, and this is the side, two side front. So to pad it, I'm going to be illustrating with this paper so that we can see it very well. Depends on how you want to pad it. You can pad it full. I'm padding with this wording, by the way, is a little bit thick. There is a softer one than this, and you can also pad with your ready-made bra cup. So to pad with this wording, what I'm going to do on this neckline area, remember I'm going to turn it, so I'll just leave few allowances to turn it. You can just measure down 1 inch or half an inch or quarter of an inch. Here I'm just marking quarter of an inch downwards on my neckline because the wording is a bit thick. So if you don't do this, it may be a bit difficult for you to turn by the time you have sticked your wording to it. So now you can see I'm removing that half an inch part, and then from here now to my underbust, this is the underbust, I will just cut this out. So you can cut this out on your pattern and then place it here so that you cut it. And then for the side, which is the main thing, so just like I did for this on the side as well, I'm going to remove the quarter of an inch from the upper part, and then on this bust point area I'm going to come inwards by between 4 inches to 5 inches depending on how busty the person is. So here I'm just coming inwards from my bust point here by 4.5 inches on this bust point area. Okay, So I'm coming here by 4.5 inches, and then on my under bust I'm just coming outwards by just 1 inch. So what I'm doing now is connecting from here to here to here. You can use a cuff or use your free hand to do this. Okay, so just make sure you bend everything well, and this is the pad that I'm going to be cutting out for my body. So now you can use your fabric to cut it out, or you can just cut this out on your pattern. Okay, so after cutting it out on your pattern, you just place it on the wording and then cut it out. So this is the part that we're padding for the body. So you just indicate this to be your center fold, and then this part is going to be the other. Is obvious because of what you have here. And then for the center, I'm just removing this neckline area from my padding, and then I'm going to stop padding this on the under bust area. So this is what I'm cutting for the center, and this is what I'm cutting for the side. So I'm going ahead to cut it for this center part. This part has to be cut on fold. Remember, the front is together, so this is what it looks like. And then for this part, you cut 2 for each side, and then I have noted the part that is going to be towards my center fold with my marker. So what I'm going to do now is to go ahead and fuse this to my bodice with my iron. Okay, there is a shiny part that has gum on it, so once you apply it, it's going to fuse them together. So as you can see now, I have fused it to my bodice. This is the center, and these are the 2 side pieces. So now I'll take this to the sewing machine now and sew. We're on the machine now, we're about to sew. So what you're just doing now is sewing the dart lines back to each other. Okay, so if you can prepare your main fabric with maybe an hairstay, just to stabilize the fabric more, especially if it's not quality fabric, because this wording is quite thick and it can pull it. Okay, so now what I'm doing now is bringing one side of the center front to the one that corresponds on the side front, and then I'm going to go ahead and place it under my machine, and I'm going to be sewing everything by 1/2 inch. So you should be consistent with the allowance that you're using to sew. So here you're going to back stitch, and then you're going to sew up to your under bust area. Okay, so when I get to my under bust now, I'll start sewing it in bits. So what I'm going to do now is to just pick one of these, and then make sure that it matches with what I have here, and then you sew very slowly. You don't have to rush it. So you sew slowly, and then you maintain the same 1/2 inch allowance that you are sewing with. So you can see I am taking it together, still maintaining the 1/2 inch that I have as my allowance, and then you continue sewing till you sew everything completely and backstage. So here on the under bust area, I'm just going to notch it a little bit for it to relax well. Okay, and now you can see what we have here. You can see our slimline. Okay, so now if you turn it to the right side, you can see what we have sewn here. It is very neat and it's looking very okay. So what you just need to do now is to go ahead using your bust arm, and then you open up your stitches and iron everything flat. So this is what it looks like now after sewing. So I'll just go ahead and do the same thing that I did here, and you can see that the everything matches. Okay, both on the hemline, on the upper part, and you can see the line where we attached our wording as well. Because we took the same allowance, it's just going to be exactly the same. Okay, so now I'll do the same thing for this side as well. So just like we did for the first one, you match everything together, you place it under your sewing machine. We are sewing by 1/2 inch, you back stitch, and then you sew to your under bust first. Okay, so when you get to your under bust, you leave your needle inside, and then you pick one of it now and start matching it to each other. So here you are going to sew slowly, and then you maintain the same 1/2 inch allowance that you are using to sew. Okay, so it is not so difficult to sew. I'm just making sure that I'm matching everything together, and I'm maintaining my same allowance. So now you can see that the M is going to be exactly the same, and now you can sew everything up. So after sewing it, just like we did for the first one, here on the under bust as well, I'm going to notch it a little bit, and then we'll pull out what we have. So now we'll go back to the table, iron it, and then you can see what our bustier looks like. But already now you can see how beautiful this is looking. So now we're on the table. Please make sure when you're sewing, you can see, make sure that you don't have any sharp points. Okay, just let everything bend, curved like this, so that you don't have any sharp pointing out. You want your bust to be round. So after doing this, now the next thing now is to take your bust ham, and then you go ahead and open up your stitches, and with your hot iron you're going to iron it. So like I said, the wording I used is very thick, so what you can do is not let your wording get to your, you leave the allowance when you're drafting your wording. You can leave allowance for your seam allowance, so that the wording does not get to it. But for me, most times if it's too thick and I don't like what I have, I just try to detach the seam allowance part. I'll detach the wording from the seam allowance part, and then I'm going to trim it. Okay, so I just go ahead and trim it. You can see now that it is reduced, so I just trim it to the barest minimum. Okay, if you feel that you can still iron it flat without doing this, you can just go ahead. So after trimming it, now you can see that it is laying better. So when I want to iron with my bust ham to further help it to lay really flat, I just put a little bit of hemming gum underneath my seam allowance, just like this. Okay, make sure you tuck it in very well. Then after placing it underneath like this, I'm going to come in with my iron, and then I'll iron it down flat. So this is what I do. Whatever it is that you do, just make sure that it works well. Okay, so you can see I'm ironing it now. I can see how flat it is laying. I've not really applied so much heat. By the time I apply more heat, now everything is going to lay flat for me. So I'll do all of this for this now. I have trimmed everything off now, and then I have ironed it. You can see how flat my seam allowance is laying now, and then I have ironed everything flat. So if you don't want to trim, just like we did for this upper part, remember we left allowance to turn on this upper part. So when you're drafting here, you can just leave like half an inch when you want to cut your pad on this side as well, so your padding is not going to enter into your seam allowance. Whichever one you want, just make sure that everything is lying flat by the time you are done. And when I turn it to the right side, you can see how beautiful this is looking. You can see how well laid this is looking. So this is what it looks like on the inside, and this is what it looks like on the outside. So like I said, this is just the shoulder that's bustier. If you want it to go towards your handhold as well, that's going to be your handhold princess, that's off shoulder bustier. So if you like a tutorial on that as well, let me know in the comment section down below. I hope you enjoyed making this beautiful tutorial with me. If you enjoyed it, let us know in the comment section. Like, comment and subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you in the next one.